To order and begin with Resolution 113-20, which is a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the Lawrence Street Water Pollution Control Facility Improvements Project. It's coming through Water Pollution Control. Mr. James.
I think we are finally ready to start getting the contract together. I'm going to yield some time to Ms. Denise Cruz and discuss it a little bit further.
Good evening. Yes, we're very excited about this. As we've talked in the past, the construction estimate was $22.5 million. Our bids came in at just under $18.7 million. And the apparent low bidder is Kokosing Construction, so we couldn't be happier with the bids. We couldn't be happier with the contractor. So we're requesting a contract up to $20 million, which will cover change orders. We don't expect to spend $20 million for change orders, but that's the number Ohio EPA is going to give us for change orders on this project.
Okay, any questions for Denise? That's good news. It was lower.
Yes.
Very good.
And I just might add, it is with a very competent contractor as well.
And I have Mr. Hall as your second, and I'm showing 2 readings.
Is
that correct? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. The next resolution is 113-20. This is a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund. My understanding is the resolution will cover additional funding that's needed to cover the remainder of the sludge removal costs coming through water pollution control. Mr. James.
I will yield some time to Superintendent Nixon to give us some final comments on it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I was before the committee a couple weeks ago when we just started really dewatering the tanks and trying to get an estimate of how much was in each of the 2 that we will soon have cleaned. Once we got the second tank dewatered and the invoice for the first tank, it appeared that we are going to run significantly short. There was more solid material in the tank than we expected. So for the last week, we've had a crane truck and 3 or 4 employees from Agri-Sludge with a skid steer down, scooping it up into a hopper, bringing it up out of the tank and into a dump truck. The real additional cost for cleaning these tanks is $90,000, but we're paying the contractual amount to Agri-Sludge for the tons of sludge that they land apply. So this has generated several hundred more tons. These are tons that we ultimately would have to get rid of anyway. The last few wet summers haven't helped us get rid of them. We've always underspent in our sludge disposal line item. So again, looking at, they're about probably half to 3/4 of the way done with this solid material in tank number 2. This should be enough to get those tanks clean. So it'll be $450,000 versus the million plus the second bidder. So we're still coming in substantially less. And when we have both these tanks empty, it will allow Kokosing to get in there hopefully first thing. We're going to try our best to keep those tanks empty. We want Agri-Sludge to keep up. This winter is tough because we have a tough time land applying the biosolids to the farmers' fields. But we're going to try and keep those 2 nice and clean and empty right now, and then when Kokosing gets in early next year, try to get that equipment installed right away so we have good mixing in those tanks, and then we can get on the 3rd tank sometime next year. So 2 readings will be fine for this.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Nixon? And you said 2 readings?
Yeah, I think it said 1 on the agenda, but we can go.
We'll ask for suspension and pass it tonight.
You want to do it tonight? It's whatever works for you guys. We can go 2 if you want to go 2, if you want to get it out of the way. Nothing's going to change in the next 2 weeks. We can do that. So.
I would prefer to put it to bed tonight if you can.
Okay. And I have Mrs. Teener as your second?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. We now have a walk-in resolution 115-20. This is a resolution to approve an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging Company, DBA Blue Label Digital Printing, and One Right Company. It is coming through finance, but I was told that Mayor Shepherd, you would have an update for us.
Yes, Blue Label is out on Route 37 right after the split across from Treehouse Foods. They are a very successful company and have been expanding very quickly. They just put, I believe, an 80,000 square foot plant addition into service early this year and hired, I believe, 50 to 60 employees. And their business growth has enabled them to plan another 24,000 foot addition to their plant and to hire another 30 people. And they are not in any community reinvestment area. They are in the enterprise zone, which is actually a county function. And this comes to us through the county commissioners. There's a letter from the commissioners attached to the resolution. And unfortunately, the way this works is we have a very short turnaround time that we have to respond to the county commissioners. This has been approved by the school system, the Fairfield County Economic Development, and will go to the commissioners, I think sometime early in December for approval. So as part of this, the city also has to approve it. So that's what this resolution is for, to approve the enterprise zone benefits for Blue Label.
Tom?
Is there any financial impact to the city by approving this?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. James?
There is some tax abatement though, and that's that.
It is a tax abatement, right?
Right. And that's a property tax, if I understand.
It's real estate tax, right.
Okay. All of the other taxation, they'll still be obligated to pay.
Right. Yeah, and their wages are significant. The
And those-
last, I haven't heard the numbers for the additional 30, but the last round of hirings they did, I think the payroll was $1.7 million, and if you did the math, they averaged about $60,000 per job. So I assume that this is similar to that.
Did they tell you what was really behind their explosive growth?
They do printing, specialized printing, and their big industry specialty is brewers. So they do labels for cans and bottles for microbrewers all over the country.
And it's over a broad spectrum of customers then?
Yeah, all over the country.
So they don't have a lot of eggs in one basket?
Correct.
Okay. It did say in the paperwork that their total payroll, before they add the people, is $5 million, and then when they add the extra people, we've got another $550,000.
Yeah.
So that's very good.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions? We will be asking for suspension on this tonight, and Mrs. Bobbitt, will you be my second?
I will.
Okay. Do we have any other resolutions to come before finance? Seeing none, do we have any departmental updates?
Hurry up, go to the next.
Mr. Mayor.
I tried to get her to move on.
Just a very quick note, we do have the signatures of all the property owners that we needed right-of-way from for the Edie Road project, so, as of this afternoon, so, good news.
Good. Awesome.
Well done.
Thank you. Are there any other departmental updates? Okay, seeing none, President Wu, do you have anything for tonight's meeting prep?
The only thing we need to, there we go. The only thing we need to note for tonight is that Mr. Matlin won't be here. That'll mean that Mr. Hall, on temporary ordinance 1820, you'll become the primary sponsor. You're all right with that?
I am, and Corey, will you second that?
Yep. Okay. I have nothing else, Madam Chairman.
Do we have anything else to come before finance? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
We're adjourned.
Regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at 6:30.
Corey, I do have others for you to sign.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage, that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
Swing into the Carriage Company and check out our sweet deals.
If you're looking for the best selection of clean, quality used vehicles, look no further than the Carriage Company. You'll feel secure with your purchase, knowing all vehicles undergo an extensive safety and service check prior to the sale. And all vehicles can be viewed online at carriagecompany.com. The Carriage Company, located at 1031 North Memorial Drive in Lancaster.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
evening. Welcome to the Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for this day, thankful for your love and grace, and thankful for the opportunity today to serve. We pray you would be with us tonight in all that we do. May we rightly work through the items that are set in front of us, and may, as we do so, do things that are in the best interest of the citizens of Lancaster. Father, there are millions of people who have already voted and millions yet to vote, and as we enter into this week of continuous voting and the election next Tuesday, we just pray you would be with us, help us, guide us toward what your ultimate will is, and we'll be sure to give you the praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Here.
Mrs. Downhour?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Matlin? Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
Mr. Stoughton?
Here.
And Mrs. Teener?
Here. Let the record reflect that 8 of 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Councilman Matlin from tonight's meeting, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Matlin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated October 12th, 2020.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
There are two. Email dated October 13th, 2020 regarding verbal resolution submitted by Mr. Stoughton, and an email dated October 25th, 2020 regarding minutes and agenda for finance submitted by Mrs. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are. Letter dated October 20th, 2020 regarding public hearing for Enterprise Zone for Blue Label Packaging Company submitted by Rick Zarbrek, Enterprise Zone Manager, Fairfield County Board of Commissioners, 210 East Main Street. Postcard regarding council's verbal resolution and first step submitted by Leah Hackelman Good. Note card regarding Proud of Lancaster for verbal resolution submitted by someone anonymous. And finally, a letter dated October 14, 2020 regarding thank you for verbal resolution submitted by Rebecca McCandlish, 500 North Cherry Street, Lancaster.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, during Lancaster City Council, we set time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city to address City Council on any item that they would wish. I see a couple of people out there. I'll just note that if anyone wants to address City Council tonight, that we ask you to come forward, sign in at the podium, state your name and address for the record. And note that during this time, members of council will not respond to you, though they may choose to do so at a later portion of tonight's meeting. Additionally, in accordance with the rules of City Council, we ask that you would keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Going once, going twice, okay. Very good. Are there reports of standing committees?
There are two. Finance Committee meeting minutes dated October 12th, 2020, submitted by Mrs. Downhour, and the Code Enforcement and Zoning meeting minutes dated October 5th, 2020, submitted by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second?
A motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings this evening. We'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the third reading of temporary resolution 104-20.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application for Round 35 grant funding for the Ohio Public Works Commission, submitted by Mr. Schoonover, seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 104-20.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 104-20. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
This is, we've discussed before, just a resolution to allow for administration to submit a grant to hopefully get some funding for the resurfacing of West 6th Avenue from Memorial to Pierce.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes?
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 104-20 passes 8-0. Temporary Resolution 107-20.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the LDOT Fund 2008 and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor, offered by Mr. Schoonover, seconded by Mrs. Downauer.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 107-20.
Second.
Motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 107-20. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
No, just a recap. This is a piece to allow LDOT to purchase property on the corner of Maple and Lawrence to tear down a house that's been condemned for a long time, so they can eventually improve the right-of-way and turn access in that intersection.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 107-20 passes 8-0. We're going to have second reading on Temporary Resolution 110-20.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund 6004, offered by Mr. James, seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
This actually is a resolution to shore up some of the uniform account in the amount of about $1,000 because they've gone through a lot of uniforms this year. Not that trying to manage things in a wastewater treatment plant gets you dirty at all, but that's where we're at. And I would like to, at this time, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 110-20.
Second.
A motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of Temporary Resolution 110-20. Further discussion, Mr. James?
No, at this time.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 8-0. Mr. James.
Yes, Mr. President, now I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon our written record resolution temporarily numbered 110-20.
Second.
A motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record Temporary Resolution 110-20. Discussion, Mr. James?
No further comment.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 110-20 passes 8-0. We now have first reading on Temporary Resolution 113-20.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the Lawrence Street Water Pollution Control Facility Improvement Project, offered by Mr. James, seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
We finally reached the point where we can now have a good contractor in place, or will have, hopefully, in the bidding process, for about $18.7 million for the renovations of the Lawrence Street facility. And we will get a loan for about $20 million to cover some unanticipated expenses. So this will be the first of two readings.
First of two readings on Temporary Resolution 113-20. Temporary Resolution 114-20.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Water Pollution Control Fund 6004, offered by Mr. James, seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Yes, this particular resolution has to do with preparation for the changes that they're going to make to the Lawrence Street facility. There are three large settling tanks, two of which are being cleaned right now. And until you start cleaning those tanks, you really have no idea how much material is in them, because all of it has to be removed somewhat honorously, if you will, and land applied. And tonight, First of all, this will require another $250,000 to cover the cost of the land application and the removal of it. And this goes in addition to the $200,000 we already passed for this, for a total of $450,000. At this time, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 114-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 114-20. Throwing stuff at me over here, clear across. Oh, that's all right, yes. Further discussion, Mr. James?
No further discussion.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Hey, I bet you want you to use something harder. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downower?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 8-0. Mr. James?
Mr. President, at this time, I would like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon our written record, resolution temporarily numbered 114-20.
Second?
A motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 114-20. Discussion, Mr. James?
No further discussion.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downower?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 114-20 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 115-20.
A resolution to approve an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging Company doing business as One Right Company, offered by Mrs. Downhour, seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Ms. Downhour?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 115-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 115-20. Ms. Downhour?
I'll save it.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 8-0. Ms. Downhour?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 115-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 115-20. Discussion, Ms. Downhour?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This was a walk-in resolution this evening, and in finance, Mayor Scheffler gave us the background information, but Blue Label Packaging Company is a specialized printing company that is out on State Route 37. And they are looking for us to pass this evening because we are on a time limit. This will allow them to complete an expansion that will then also add approximately 30 employees, and it'll be about a 24,000 square foot expansion, if I have that correct. I'm looking at the mayor, making sure that I have those numbers right. We need to get back to the county commissioners with our approval of this enterprise zone agreement.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Yes, Ms.
I
Teener?
have some actually questions. I see though where this was dated the 12th, one section was dated the 12th of October, and it looked like October the 20th, the mayor got this, and it was CC'd to David Wool and Bob Wolfinger. Did I miss an email somewhere? Did we know about this before tonight, and this was a walk-in?
I did not.
So this is a walk-in piece. They're required to give notification to the mayor, to the treasurer, and to the president of council, which I
Right.
received via letter submitted to the clerk. She read into the record this evening, along with the other letter. Well, she didn't have to read the other letters in because they weren't to city council.
Right.
I received that letter on, I believe it was Friday.
Okay, well, and it says on here too that they're not having their meeting, the commissioners, until the 15th of December. We have 2 other meetings. I just guess I have some questions, because I don't remember seeing this I don't know when it was put into our packet, but I saw it today.
I got it today.
Okay, well, and I was kind of like, what? So, I know, I see that, but, and then would the city get any of this is a tax abatement, correct?
Real estate.
This is a
tax.
real estate
Okay,
tax
so
abatement.
would the city get any of this money at all? Any of the money if we do this? I mean, and how long are they asking for?
15 years. The city gets a very minor portion of any real estate taxes. We will, however, get the city income tax from the jobs created from this.
Okay, so are they getting abatement on the income tax?
Real estate tax.
Just real estate tax?
And it should only be for the improvements that they make to the building,
Right,
correct?
only on the additional 20.
Well, because we did the abatement thing a couple years ago, and I can't remember all the details on that, so,
But they're not included in any of, in the other, they're not in that district, so they
Okay.
have not, right?
We're talking about different things here.
Right, it's a different, yeah. it's-
okay, well, that's
yeah.
what, I mean, because when I got
Yeah.
it today, so I was kind of like, well,
This is an enterprise
Enterprise.
agreement, and you can only modify that agreement so many times. My understanding, is that right?
You're probably thinking about the CRA.
Okay,
see, sorry,
The enterprise zone is a county
correct.
function, not a city.
it's the county,
I'm sorry, you are
okay.
right.
And we have to approve it along with the school board because the business is located in the city.
Correct, and then the improvements is what is being abated,
Right.
and it's on the real estate portion of that. So
Okay.
if they build I don't care what they build, and they basically hire 100 people that are working in the city, then we're still gonna get,
Right.
we're gonna give up a very small piece of income tax to,
The real
yeah.
estate.
'cause we don't-
And I understand that, but, you
I'm
know,
sorry, real estate tax.
but getting it the day of, and if I hadn't have looked back
Sure.
again through the minutes, I mean, you know, with the dates that there are, it's kind of, you know, because some of us do look through our things, which I think everybody does, but, you know, I caught that, and I was like, well, wait a minute, did I miss this from, you know, when I looked before? So I think that when, you know, in council, when things get out here like this and you get it at a certain time, I think we need to get it to us so that we know. At least if you don't have the legislation part, maybe the letter part of it, like the letters that were sent out, that might give us kind of a heads up. And I wouldn't be asking these questions on council floor, I guess.
Ms. Sandy?
I apologize, but I was on vacation last week.
That's okay.
This would have been in the packet, and the office did what they could.
I know,
to-
but I'm talking about like the
Okay.
letters.
All right.
I'm talking
All right.
about,
I'm
that's
just-
not you.
No, I just
I
want to
mean-
apologize for, it's my fault, I was off last week, that I did not get
It's
it
not
out
your
in the
fault you're
packets.
off.
So, well, you would have had it, but.
But I'm talking about even the letters. I mean, you know, because the one's the 20th and this, I mean, I don't know, just so, because I was real confused and I wouldn't be asking these questions now if it wasn't for that, so.
What do you mean, the letters?
Well, there's a letter, the one that,
The letter that I received on Friday?
yeah, I mean, if we could have gotten something sent, I mean, you know, and then this other thing is dated the 12th of October.
That's just the application.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously this is being worked on, so this isn't like something that happened today. That's what I'm saying, you know, maybe if we had a heads up, like we discuss other things ahead of time, this would be good to have, to get a heads up, that's all I'm saying.
I got a heads up on Friday,
Okay, well,
and it was passed off to the clerk to be read into the record.
okay,
And so, as she said she was on vacation, it's Monday, so.
okay, I got it.
Okay.
I'm just saying that, you know, but we've had other things that we've gotten that day, so,
Other thing, you mean other legislation that's come
Yes.
through day of? I understand that.
okay.
Okay, further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes,
Temporary Resolution 115-20 passes 8-0. We now move to, well, are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with temporary ordinance 18-20.
An ordinance to accept the final plat for the Overlook Section 2, offered by Mr. Hall and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, this has actually been on our docket for a while. Just as a point of reference, this plat is approximately 30 parcels. It's visible from Edie Road behind Pizza Cottage. There are no changes to a longstanding submission. It has been reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission, so I think it's time for us to move forward.
Okay.
So with that, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 18-20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 18-20. Further discussion, Mr. Hall?
No.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 18-20 passes 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for stepping in to take that on in the absence of Mr. Mallon. Temporary ordinance 20-20.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in a maximum principal amount of $1,080,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of the renovation of an existing building for use by the city's municipal court, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Offered by Mrs. Downauer, seconded by Mr. Stoughton.
Ms. Downauer.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 20-20.
Second?
A motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 20-20. Ms. Downauer?
Yes, as we discussed in finance several weeks ago, this is for the continued, the work that was done on the municipal building, and we'll get to see it every year for quite a while.
No,
So,
6 more.
oh,
6 more years.
6 more years. That's still quite a while.
Who's counting?
But who's counting?
Mr.
You're
Stoughton.
thinking of the Edie Road TIF.
Oh, that's the, yes. that
That's the
one's-
one that goes on forever.
See how things get confusing?
But 6 years is a long time, so.
And we had this legislation for
Miss-
3 readings.
Thank you, Mrs. Downer.
It's confusing.
Oh, hers was 3 readings. Okay,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
is,
this one was 3.
oh.
All right, further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 20-20 passes 8-0. Temporary ordinance 21-20.
An ordinance to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement to purchase approximately 0.14 acres, more or less, of real property identified as parcel number 0535118000 from Wayne A. Hedges and Lorena J. Hedges, offered by Mr. Schoonover, seconded by Mrs. Downauer.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 21-20.
Second?
A motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 21-20. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
This is just the companion ordinance piece to Resolution 10720 we passed earlier.
Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 21-20 passes 8-0. Now have second reading on temporary ordinance 23-20.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of revenue notes in the aggregate principal amount of $968,044.80 to pay costs of improving Edie Road, Memorial Drive, and Michael's Way by grading, widening, paving, curbing, and improving bridges and railroad crossings, relocating utilities and installing sidewalks, traffic signals and signs, and water, sanitary, and stormwater lines and facilities, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Offered by Mrs. Downauer, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Ms. Downauer.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a little bit of change. We would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 23-20.
Guys are hosing the clerk up over
Yeah,
here.
I know.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 23-20. Ms. Downauer.
I'm deferring to Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. Stoughton, you've been yielded the floor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is the Edie Road TIF information. We're going to be doing this. Councils well beyond our serving are going to be doing this. It costs the city no money. These are the renewal of the loan agreements. The reason I want to move forward with these, it just takes her forever to read this, number one. And our next meeting, we should start getting pay ordinance and budget information. So stuff is going to start piling up on us. So this is a these two pieces are companion pieces. It doesn't cost the city a nickel. It's just procedural information to basically justify and pay back the TIF. So that's why I'm asking that we move forward on these two pieces.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Stoughton. Is there anyone who would like to discuss the motion to suspend?
I think she needs to read it one more time.
Well, she's got to read the next one,
Yeah.
so she'll get appurtenances one more time. All right. Please call the roll on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 8-0. Ms. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 23-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 23-20. Ms. Downhour,
No further discussion.
discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 23-20 passes 8-0. Temporary ordinance 24-20.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of a revenue note in the aggregate principal amount of $300,264.18 to reimburse Flagstar Bank, FSB, for a draw on a letter of credit in connection with the cost of improving Edie Road, Memorial Drive, and Michaels Way by grading, widening, paving, curbing, and improving bridges and railroad crossings, relocating utilities, and installing sidewalks, traffic signals, and signs, and water, sanitary, and stormwater lines and facilities, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Offered by Mrs. Downhour, second by Mr. Stoughton.
Ms. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 24-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 24-20. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
Same as the previous ordinance, 23-20.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Motion to suspend. Excuse me. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 8-0. Ms. Downhour.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 24-20.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 24-20. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 24-20 passes 8-0. We don't have first reading on any ordinance tonight. Are there other ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council? If not, is there any action to be taken on tabled legislation tonight? Is there unfinished business this evening? Is there new business this evening? Okay, the only new business I might mention is, as I mentioned during the prayer before the meeting, that we obviously have just a few days left to go and vote, and I want to encourage everyone who's watching and everyone who's here to go out and exercise their right to vote this year. Other new business? Yes. Mr. Mayor.
I understand that the President of City Council has a birthday tomorrow, so I just wanted to wish him a happy birthday from
Fake news.
all the staff
Thank you.
of the
No,
city.
the fake news is you're 29 again.
That's 29 again. Again, thank you very much. I
Well,
appreciate
we
that.
could sing to him, but
No, that's not
No.
necessary.
really embarrass him. I mean,
It'd be a gift if you didn't, Mr. Stone. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. Other new business this evening? All right, please, clerk, please read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
We have 3 meetings that are scheduled for the rest of the year. November 9th, November 23rd, and December 14th, all meetings 6:30 PM here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days, Finance, November 9th, 6 PM here in council chambers. Safety, November 13th, 7:30 a.m. at City Hall 1897 Conference Room. IT Telecom, November 20th at 7:30 a.m. at City Hall 1897 Conference Room. And finally, Finance, November 23rd, 6 PM here in council chambers.
Very good. Are there any bills this evening?
There is one, PNC payable to MNCO for publication of legislation in the amount of $84.90.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to pay the bills. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a need for an executive session? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Our meeting is adjourned. For those of you who have to sign that legislation we just passed, remember to do so, please.
Aye.